I started in on the acquisition side and I took his program and I learned all of the different, I just dived in. There's like something like 18 or 20 hours and I just ate it all up. Um, and I just started straight into acquisitions, calling realtors, going out looking for deals. And it took about 8 weeks or so to really get my rhythm inside that process of like staying consistent. And then I did 9 deals in 9 weeks.
Welcome to the Deals Estate Wholesaling Podcast, where we discuss finding, financing, and facilitating off-market real estate deals. I'm your host, Dejo, and I'm joined on the show today by Bryce Kaminsky to discuss and share his experience on the human nature and the psychology of closing over 200 deals across the US and Canada. A little bit about Bryce. Bryce is the former head coach at Blackcard University. He has done over 200 deals across North America. He specializes in finding and training for off-market acquisitions. In today's episode, Bryce and I discuss how he became the former head coach of the prestigious Stefan's Blackcard University, how he and his team buy problems, not houses. And we discussed the weekly acquisitions group that he's putting together. Guys, you do not want to miss this episode. Now, before we dive in, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who is listening to this podcast. If you are a fan, please do not forget to like and subscribe to the episode. And we would also appreciate a 5-star review. Now, without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Bryce. Welcome to the Deals Estate Wholesaling Podcast.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm very well. This is a very, very proud moment for me, and I'm really honored to have you here. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. I see you doing big things, and I've been watching you on Instagram, and yeah, you got some knowledge. You're dropping bombs all day, so I was like, I got to get on this show.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone who listens to the podcast and, supports the podcast, and more importantly to yourself and every other guest who has come on to share that experience. So, I'm equally here to learn from you, learn from your experience. And I know everyone who's listening to this episode, they're going to be dodging bombs all through.
Yeah, we'll see if we can pull it out. I think we got a few. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, if you've listened to any of our episodes, you know that we always want to start with a quick introduction on the background. For anyone who doesn't know who is speaking, do you mind sharing a bit about yourself, your background in real estate, and how you got started?
Yeah, so it was 2015, and I'd been in the music industry for maybe 5 years or so at the time. And I wasn't making enough money. I was like, I got to do something. I'm never going to own a car. I'm never going to own anything, have a house, nothing. So I had originally been doing music with Stefan Aarnio back when he was a musician in university. And I saw on his Facebook page, he's like, I'm looking for an acquisitions person. I knew nothing about real estate, like nothing. Like I knew about maybe fixing houses, but buying, selling, flipping, contracts, nothing. So I'm like, what do I got to lose? It's either I move to Vancouver or Toronto and do music, or I stay in Winnipeg and work with Stefan Aarnio, who's like a rising star at the time. So I decided to take him up on it because, if it didn't work out, I could always still do that. But yeah, it opened my eyes to the fact that there's a whole business of real estate that a lot of people don't even know that's happening. So
Yeah.
I started in on the acquisition side and I took his program and I learned all of the different, I just dived in. There's like something like 18 or 20 hours and I just ate it all up. And I just started straight into acquisitions, calling realtors, going out looking for deals. And it took about 8 weeks or so to really get my rhythm inside that process of like staying consistent. And then I did 9 deals in 9 weeks. So it was just a deal after deal after deal. And they're just coming in. And Stefan's like, okay, We have enough property to flip. Let's just put the brakes on. Let's flip these properties and then we'll start acquiring again. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. And we started doing that, but I didn't stop acquiring deals. I was like, I'm already in the zone. So eventually now I'm like, okay, what do I do with them? And he's like, well, we could just start wholesaling them then, like sell them to other people who don't have any deals. Like we're eating up all the deals in town. We might as well sell a few. And that's really where I got into the idea of wholesaling, and just started offloading the deals that, maybe weren't for us, or um, we just didn't have the space in our pipeline at the time because we were full up. So after that kind of run, the real estate training school, Blackcard University, at the time called Stefan Aarnio High Performance, was blowing up. People were very excited to learn how to flip houses. The market was hot. Real estate was hot, 2015, 2016, 2017. And so he's like, hey, I need your help. My calendar's full. I need another coach. So I started coaching all the like bronze students, which was like a 3-month get your first deal thing. And after a few months of doing that, I got into the bigger programs and teaching people how to like raise money and build a pipeline and make real estate a business as opposed to just flipping one house. And I did that, I guess, for a good part up until 2018, 2019. At the time, I was coaching probably 30 students at a time. So, like, all Monday be 8 hours of calls, Tuesday, 8 hours of calls. Then I do real estate Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, maybe have some time on Sunday, and then just rinse and repeat. Um, but it got to the point where it was like, okay, do I really want to be a real estate like coach? I really like the game of finding properties and like doing that business. So I had the opportunity to go down into Ohio, which is a huge hot button right now. Like so many Americans are not looking at it; they're over it. But Canadians are like, "Oh my God, I can go down there and buy a house for $20,000 or $30,000 American." So you're noticing a lot of the real estate people are looking to like places like Ohio right now because it is so
Yep,
close
yep.
to Ontario, right? And so I spent 6 months, actually moved my family down there. We got an apartment, went
Oh,
to
you
the
did?
local checkers, um, and just really lived, like immersed myself in the Cleveland experience, which was it blew my mind that the same house here in Winnipeg is like 150 or $200,000, and you can buy the thing for 10% of the price down in Cleveland. Still to date, the prices haven't shifted, but the rent in Winnipeg and the rent in Cleveland is the same, except the prices in Winnipeg are way
Ooh,
higher. So um, yeah, just one thing that I learned down in Ohio was, as Canadians, we're constantly looking for the biggest, baddest deal to put the most money into. We're like, oh, this
yep.
thing's trashed. I want to put 100 grand into it. But it was the opposite in Cleveland. It was like there's so many trash things that you're trying to find something that's not so broken to flip it quick and get it back on the market because there's so many opportunities. So I did that right up until COVID. Shortly after that, Stefan Aarnio passed away in 2020. And since then, it's just been wholesaling here in Winnipeg. We organize the local Winnipeg Whalers, which is all the local wholesalers. I run that group
Hmm.
here in Winnipeg.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
we realized we were all hunting the same fish, so we might as well get on the same boat. So when a seller calls one of us, we're all in the Facebook group like, "Hey, did did so and so message you?" And then we're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah," and then we're able to stop fighting each other and actually work together to find a solution for some of these sellers who need our help. So I've been doing that since 2020, and just in the last 6 months now, it's been probably a good part of 2 years where I haven't been training. I kind of retired. I joke around saying like I did my tour of duty, like I went to Vietnam, I fought my war, but I realized that there's a lot of programs out there that talk about raising money and maybe like the Burr method and multifamily, but their programs are like 1 hour long on how to buy a property, or maybe like 2 hours long. They're like, okay, now you know everything. Now you know how to buy property. It's like, okay, really? Like
Yeah.
that's the number one mistake is just you can't recover from a bad buy. So you might as well learn and specialize in buying, and raising money will come. What
Yep.
you do with the deal will come, but if you don't have a deal, now you're just sitting around, twiddling your thumbs waiting for something to happen. So I said, I'm going to start training just on buying property so that people can maybe add it on to their program that they're doing
Yep.
multifamily or whatever, and just really focus and make it all about that, hours and hours of content just about buying property. So that's what I've been focused on, as well as I also do the Property Profits podcast. So if anyone wants to check out, local investors, national, I interview them probably 10 or 12 episodes a week. So there's lots of my face and lots of me talking on the internet. If people want to find me, the best place is at Bryce Kaminsky on Instagram. That's where all my stuff is. So that's the short version of it. But it's been a journey, and I kind of fell into real estate, and I don't think there's anything that is out there that people can do with such a limited, like, you don't have to go to university, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that. You just really have to grind it out. You have to go after it. And if you really want success in real estate, it's just a matter of effort, consistency. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be, doing anything special. You just have to do it. And that's really what I'm out here, is just making sure that message goes out there that, if you want it, you can have it. And it's not that far away, but you gotta go and get it. It's not going to come to you. So,
Oh man, Bryce, you know, thank you for, I guess I can call that a monologue. So you know how, when you watch like the Oscars, you watch like these illustrious events
yeah, yeah,
where, like someone does like a monologue. That was fantastic. And what I tried to do was I wanted to take a few notes while you were speaking,
mm-hmm,
so that I would try to cherry pick on a few things that I feel that people might be interested in, so that we could dive into that. So
yeah,
very
fire.
very sequential, like, series of events there. So I wanted to start off with your music career. So personally, I didn't even know that you used to sing. So like,
Well, I
do you
didn't
still
sing.
sing?
I was, I'd done some singing, but what ended up happening was, I started recording my own band because I was like, I don't trust other people to record my music. And then suddenly people started asking me to record their music. And it ended up that I started a recording studio, and people started coming in. So I would actually was like the guy behind the desk mixing and
Yep.
mastering, and like coaching people to get the best takes for their music. And that's what led me
So
to
did you and
actually,
Stefan ever sing together?
we jammed a few times, but his music career and my music career, like when his was like, cause he quit music when his band kind of fizzled out and he started real estate. And from that point until I started real estate, I was still in the music industry for probably a good another 5 years. Well, he was building that momentum to where he actually got to by 2015. So we jammed sometimes, but a lot of it was, I think, what really connected for both of us is that there's a lot of hustle in the music industry, and that really paid out. People and consistency and doing a ton of work for sometimes feels like no return. So that's really
Yep.
like the music industry made it really easy for me to put in tons and tons of hours with the deferred payment. When you're making an album,
Yep.
you might
Yep.
spend 200 hours on it only for it to go come out 6 months later. So
Mm.
a lot like real estate, you can spend hours and hours, you know, flyers, calls, whatever, and then boom, 20 grand, 50 grand, whatever the payout
Yep.
is for your deal.
I would like to dive into that mindset of delayed gratification, because you mentioned that it took you 8 weeks, which is about 2 months, to get your first deal. And then
Yeah.
after that, it sort of snowballed. But a lot of people don't even wait 8 weeks. Some quit in the first week. So can you maybe tell us about how that delayed gratification mindset helped in
Well, I got
transferring
I
over
got
to real estate?
close. I got close to quitting. It was about probably like 5 or 6 weeks in where Stefan sat down and he could tell I was getting beaten down by it because it was like offer rejected, 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 not good, not good, and just like missing the target. And I'm like, so badly, I want to get a deal, but having that mentor telling me,
Yep.
hey, no good, try again, no good, try again, try it this way, and like breaking eggs, burning bread, market spends, whatever. And there was a point where I was just like at my desk, and I can remember being like, I gotta, I gotta find something else to do. But it was all the little actions, like the compound effect of knowing these realtors, and like maybe all the people I called in week 1 and week 2, week 3, it wasn't paying off. But then all of a sudden the floodgates are open, and I know exactly what I'm looking for and what I'm not looking for. And then it became really easy. It was like the light was flipped on, and it was just like bang,
Yeah.
bang, 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 bang. Because it was
Okay.
a process of learning. When you're flipping property, there's very specific numbers. Like it's all about the buy. It's all about knowing your numbers on the reno. The money, yeah, you can have expensive money, you can have cheap money, that can change things. But if you don't know your reno, and you go into a deal and it's like 20 extra K, well, that might be your whole profit margin on
Yeah.
something in Winnipeg where it's like 200, 250, right? So
Yep.
I think the big struggle for me was um, I didn't really know what I didn't know. And so for me, I just made sure that I stuck to the process. I showed up early. I would come in at 7:30 or 8, and the office would start rolling at about 9, and I'd just be on the computer going through MLS, what's new, setting up my day, checking my properties, and I just put in the work, and it eventually clicked, and I could back off a little bit. I didn't have to come in at 7 anymore because I'd already done all my training. But one thing about real estate that I always say is like, nobody's like, real estate's not waiting around for you to figure it out. You can figure it all out today. If you want to do your 20-hour course you just bought in 20 hours right now, you could do that. Or you could do it over 10 days, 2 hours, or you could do an hour for 20 days. And maybe you get your result in like 3 months or 6 months. But if you want a result collapsed in like a couple of weeks, you can have that too. Because there's no one stopping you in real estate from going out and getting
Yeah.
it.
So for some of the guys that you train today, if you had to tell them, hey, what's that time period that you need to commit to at the minimum to give this a shot before you say, hey, I don't think this is for me, right? Because, and the reason why I ask is you came from the music world and you mentioned that you had no idea about sales, but you
Mm-hmm.
learned the sales process, you learned acquisition. So for someone who is coming in saying, hey, I don't know how to talk to people. I don't have a sales background. I don't have a marketing background. I don't know how to speak with people. I don't know how to convince people. I don't know how to negotiate. What would you say to them, to get over that hump? And, what time do they need to put in to get to a point where they can start closing deals?
Well, I think that any of like all of those skills that you mentioned are trainable. Like they're all super trainable. Like if you can have a conversation with your friend on the phone, you can have a conversation with a seller on the phone. But what I did was I just maximized my training. When I was driving around looking at deals, I had Jordan Belfort's Straight Line of Persuasion on the car all the time, listening to the tonality. If you're going to get anything in real estate, it's all tonality. If you sound one type of way, a real estate agent will eat you alive. They're like, this guy's new. They'll cut your head off. So you gotta like relax, it's a business to business conversation. You're in the business of buying, they're in the business of selling. There's no authority position. They're just like you. And if you could get rid of all that anxiety around calling out in business, you're gonna save yourself you're gonna collapse that whole time frame because it's not as scary as you think it is. It's just fear of the unknown.
Yeah. Okay. And how did you find this process between the US and Canada? You mentioned that you moved your family to Cleveland. Did you see any opportunities that maybe were better in the US outside of just the price points? Like, did you think wholesaling was
I
better,
think,
more scalable in the US?
oh, for sure it is. Like, it's not even a question. There's 40 million people in Canada and 400 million people in the United States. You saying you can't find 52 deals in all of the United States? You can't do a deal a week in 440 million people? No, like, but in Canada, it's tough. Like, if you're Canadian, it's tough out there. There's, our interest rates are tight. People can't even move out of their house, even if they wanted to. They look at the rent and they'll stay in their crap house because they just can't leave. There's just no financial position in Canada right now where someone who's got a busted ass house can't they can't leave. They're just gonna have to go into like a $3,000 mortgage, or they're gonna have to go into a 7% mortgage or a $2,500 rent. Like, it's insane. They have to leave town. Like, a person in Ontario would have to sell their house, get on a bus because now they're broke because they probably had to sell it as a loss, and they're greyhound themselves to somewhere like Winnipeg or Regina where maybe the rent is affordable enough, and they just live there the rest of their days. Like, Canada is really tough right now. There's opportunity all the time,
Yeah.
but if you are trying to scale and you really like you've already hit that button and you're like, Canada, I've done it.
Yeah.
Try the United States. Like, there's nothing stopping you but a few paperwork, getting yourself set up to do the business in the States. But
Yep.
there's ways to do that before you even start. There's nothing stopping you. It's a free market. People are always worried about, well, what happens if I do a deal in the States? What about the taxation? What about, how is the transaction going to happen? How about you get a deal first, figure it out, and then if you really love it so much, get set up. But like, people spend so much time getting set up and ready
Yeah.
that they never
Yeah.
actually do anything. They make it that the excuse.
So it's very interesting you say that, because I think it was in 2022 that I was thinking of doing stuff in the US. Now, without getting set up, I got a dialer. I signed up for PropStream.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I signed up for skip tracing.
Mm-hmm.
I actually paid for the leads. I got my VA
Yeah.
to call. I actually started calling leads in the US. I got my market. I didn't do it long enough. Again, as with anything, you need to do it long enough and stay the course. So as you mentioned,
Yeah.
minimum 2 months, 3 months. I think I did it for like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, I didn't need to get set up. If I just wanted to test it out, I I actually did, but I didn't test it out long enough for me
Yeah.
to get to a point where I could convince myself to go through the process of getting set up in the US. But yes, you are 100% correct. You don't have to set up before you test it out. You could just, everything
Mm-hmm.
is online. Like, all the tools
Yeah.
are online. You only need to get set up most
Well, I
probably
think
when,
the other thing too is a lot of people, when they're thinking about wholesaling in the States, they're like, okay, let's say I found something. Who do I sell it to? And that's the whole other side of wholesaling, is like, you got to be able to disposition that product, got to get it to someone. So if that's your
but
fear,
there's
if that's,
multiple sites right now.
oh,
Well, I
yeah.
hear that there's multiple sites right now where, like, you just need to sign up to that site and thousands of investors are just waiting there for you, like Investor Lift. Like, I've
But it's
heard,
the thing that people don't know, so they don't do. They think that their fears say, you know what, I'm not going to bother doing it. But the reality, like
yeah,
you're saying, is there's hedge funds buying like crazy. Facebook Marketplace, Facebook groups like Buy Ohio or Buy Florida. There's groups you can sign up. You could start emailing the people wholesaling already in those markets and say, hey, I found something. And they'll be happy, more than happy, to take a piece of the action to move it to their list. So I think the real thing is just, it's always fear. And, one thing Stefan said to me before he passed away, he came back from his fast. He would go fasting for 40 days. He wouldn't eat anything for 40 days. And he'd come back. He said, Bryce, fear doesn't exist. And I said, what do you mean? Like, people are afraid of stuff all the time. He says, that's true. But fear is not real. The unknown is real. So if you're worried about, like, oh, am I going to be successful in real estate in the States? Well, it's probably because you're missing information. Because as
yeah,
soon as you're not afraid of the dark, right? But as soon as you know where the light switch is in a room, you can just walk in, flip it. But the first time you're like fumbling around. So if
yeah,
you want a
yeah,
straight line to the light switch, get a mentor. They'll tell you where it is. And then you walk in, flip the switch, And now you can do that repeatedly for the rest of your life. Just do the business the best you can, but you can learn things in a couple different ways: the hard way, or it's time or money. So you can either spend your time and learn the skills yourself, YouTube University, maybe put together some plan that works for you, or copy someone else's plan, buy their plan, execute their plan. How
Yep.
many franchises exist in this world? Do you think everyone's just like, I'm going to start a McDonald's, and then now all of a sudden we've got Bryce's McDonald's over here and your McDonald's over there? No. If we really want a McDonald's, what do? Buy the
Buy the
franchise,
franchise.
sell the same burger, get the same result. And it's the same with training. Find someone who's doing what you're doing, buy their system, whatever it may be, and just open your McDonald's and start making the money right away, instead of, oh, I'm going to have to tweak the recipe. Oh, is my burger any good? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I actually love that because the truth is, like, when I was going through that process myself, I told myself, like, why am I going through this process of setting things up myself, without someone who has done this before? Like, how do I know that what I'm doing is correct? Like, to your point, how do I know that the burger that I'm selling is the right burger, is the right size, the right ingredients? Like, how do I know what I'm doing is the right thing? And after like a few weeks, I said, you know what, if I don't have a mentor or someone who has done this before, most likely Canadian doing wholesaling in the US, not necessarily a US person doing wholesaling in the US.
Yeah, it's a little different.
I'd rather want to wait, and focus on my Canadian operations versus trying out myself. Again, as you said, time and money, right? But
But
yeah,
do you
completely
wish
agree.
that you didn't quit?
Very good question. Very so, that's a very good question. You know, okay, let me be very, very
We
honest.
know the answer is that you wish you didn't quit.
I
Because, like,
wish I
think about
didn't
it. You
quit.
had two
I wish I
years.
didn't quit.
Where would you
Yeah.
have been if you just kept dialing for the last 2 years?
Yeah.
And we
So
wouldn't
if
be
I
on
didn't
this
stop,
podcast. You'd be on some
true.
boat in Florida, surrounded by, rich people and stuff. Because it's not a different game. It's a different phone number, a different area code. Like, people are people everywhere. And that's really what I train in my programs, is this really the human nature of things. Like, people spend too much time focusing on what they want out of these wholesales and these deals,
Hmm.
when, like, if you don't understand why they're selling or what's going on, like, you might as well go back to the drawing board. Maybe you get lucky and you get a lay down, someone just gives you their house, but that's not how you scale and how you really blow it up. You got to learn people,
Yeah.
and they're the
I have a
same.
question. So I have a question, and it's along the lines of US and Canada, and like my thought process is, there's a world where I tell myself I should have continued. There's also the concept of, what do you call it? Is it like an inch? I think an inch wide, a mile deep, where you
Mhm.
sort of focus on one thing, right? And
Yeah,
you can argue that operating in the US and Canada could be a distraction, where if you are competing with wholesalers in Canada and you are doing Canada and US, it could be a distraction. Or if you're competing with wholesalers in the US, it could be a distraction. So it might be helpful to start with one, focus on one and then, scale up. So a question to you, when you moved the family to Ohio, did you find that it was better to do wholesaling there? And was there a reason why you moved back to Canada versus continuing in the US?
well, COVID. You can't. You
Okay.
don't want to be. You don't want to be in a different country during a global pandemic. So, November 2019, things started turning. We were actually in Florida when that all went down, and we were just like, okay, drove back to Winnipeg. So, um, I think you make a good point about focus. It really depends at what stage you are in your career, right? You can make a lot of
Mhm.
money in your backyard, and that's the easiest way to start. Is like, there's no reason to, like, uproot your whole thing. But I have what I've realized over the last couple of years is, and I was talking to another guy in the course the other day, and I said, there's a there's a law in 48 Laws of Power. It says, formless, be formless, and it talks about the Athenians and how they were surrounded by stone and they couldn't be conquered because you had to come by boat. You couldn't come through the mountains. It's very hard. And if you're gonna be like in one place, that's going to limit your opportunity. And so even if maybe didn't make a lot of money right away in the American game, being able to master the skill of taking to the air and the sea where you can trade internationally and one market isn't hitting, you pivot. When here we are in Winnipeg here today, 2024, it's not a good time. It's been way easier. It's been way easier in Canada, since the interest rates went. People have really, the human nature of people buying and selling real estate has really changed. There's a lot of fear. So when there's a lot of fear, people close up. They're not moving, they're not refinancing, the bank's
Yep.
scared like crazy. They're pulling back interest rates, they're pulling back lending. Private lenders are raising their prices. Opportunity, I talked to a guy who does construction the other day. He said five or six of the people that I would normally do construction for, like investors, they're just pulled out. They're just like, I'm waiting for something. They're waiting for some magical tip of the hat that says now is the time to go. And when you're forced to be in a physical location, like this is my city, this is what I do here in say Toronto or Winnipeg or Regina. When the market changes, you're captured, you're conquered. You can't take to the air, you can't take to the sea, you can't trade internationally. You're pretty much cut off at the thing. You're surrounded by the market, your enemy, and the enemy's got you surrounded. You can't bring food in, you're gonna die, you're gonna starve. So you
Yeah.
gotta get good at taking to the air, even if it's a skill that's like a secondary one. You don't want to be reliant on your market entirely. Like to say that your skills only work or my skills only work in my local market, yeah, it's comfortable. I'm sure it's really comfortable to do what we do in our own market, in our own backyard. I've driven down that street. I've knocked on that door every year for the last 10 years. Like, he still doesn't want to sell. He still doesn't want to sell. I'm not surprised. It's been 10 years, maybe 10 years from now. But what I looked at it is I said, look, I got to understand where the real wealth and millionaires are made. And when people say all wealth is either held or made in real estate, I really do believe that it's in capitalist countries like the United States. Canada, how can you say a buy and hold product is a long term investment when you have to renew the mortgage every 5 years and get a new rate? In the States, I just get a 30-year fixed mortgage. And now I have a repeatable business. That's a business, a 30-year mortgage. But here in Canada, they're like, oh, we'll give you 5. And then in 5 years, all of a sudden it's 7. Your cash flow's shot. You're raising rents. You're thinking about selling. Not a thing in the United States because there's real investment basics happening in the American market. So if you really want to get wealthy, you want to get, you want to have wealth preserved. You also want to be transacting in a big way. I love Canada. I'm born here. Oh, Canada. But really, things have to change because my appetite for doing Canadian wholesaling is at an all-time low. Do I still love it? Do I still love my city? Yeah, cool. But you know, do a 10K wholesale in the United States, bring that back and exchange it. Now, how much is it? 14,000 Canadian. Okay, maybe you're making $500 a door on your rental in Ohio. You bring it back at 750. Like it, it just doesn't add up. Like I get it, and I think people find it easy to invest in Canada if they're Canadian, but
Yeah.
do a little bit more research and you'll find that it's not that much more difficult. All the time I meet Canadians down there in
Yeah.
Ohio, in Florida, in Texas, expats that are just like, I've had enough of the real estate game in Canada, so I quit and I moved to the States and that's what I do. Or they just do it virtually.
Yeah. So I have a question. Um, I don't recall who I was speaking with, but the person said, wholesaling in the US and with Canada, it's more like in the US, it's like a volume game, right? It's a repeatable process, as you said. You have the tools. It's
Mm-hmm.
an open system. You call as many leads as possible. You cycle through as many leads as possible. So you could have like an average 5K, 10K wholesale fee. So,
Mm-hmm.
validate this for me. What would you say the average fees would be in, for example, Cleveland, Ohio versus Winnipeg, for example?
Um, What's interesting is like a house might be worth 20 grand in Cleveland, right? But you can buy it for 5 and someone will still pay you 15K on that because there's
Okay.
numbers that underline work. And there's still places like on the east side of Cleveland, if you go further into like Shaker Heights where you can pay 250,000 for a house. There's still
Yeah.
places further out where you can still throw 550K at something. So it's not a function of um, volume. It's just
Hmm.
that the volume exists,
Got it.
that you can take it to that level. And when you look at Canadian wholesalers, they typically get capped out by the population. Like there's only so many deals in a population every year. There's only so many people going through divorces, going through downsizing, going through like estate sales and probates and stuff. But when you look at, like, for instance, in Cleveland, right? In 2008, they had their market correction because they actually let their market boom and bust. So in 2008, there was something like 1 million people in Cleveland. By the end of 2008, 2009, the population had gone down to 490,000 people. So almost 400,000 people roughly left town. And those houses, when I was there in 2019, are still empty, still waiting for someone to
Whoa.
do something with. It was like everyone left 20 minutes ago. You go into the
Yeah.
house and there's newspapers on the table like from 2009. The house has been empty for almost a decade. And when houses get so bad, they don't even wait around. They're just like, you'll be driving past a house that needs work, and then the city will say you got a week to do something about it, and the person's long gone. They don't even care about it. They put the keys in the mailbox, and by the end of the day, no asbestos testing, no like remediation. No, they level that thing in one day. They fill it with dirt and they throw hay on it, and now there's a new lot for sale. Like, it's aggressive capitalism, and that's where real money is made. None of this like, try to tear a house down in Ontario. How long do you think it takes to get all the tests and asbestos reports and permits and variances? No, they're all about the bottom dollar progress. That's the difference between the United States and Canada's. Progress is the priority. New, now, let's go, let's make a deal, let's
Yeah.
do something about it right away. And Canada's just really not that. 30, 90, maybe next year I'll be able to build the house. No, it's just, it's too slow. There's tons of red tape. And Canada's awesome. Again, this isn't, I cut my teeth here. I still do it every day here. But I think a lot of people need to start shifting their opinions about the possibility of doing it. There's more than, like, if every wholesaler in Canada, like me, you, and the other like 200 people doing it for real, do you think we'd even make a dent in 440 million people? No, there'd be a few less deals for the other people. I talked to someone in Dallas um, last week. Their business, just in the Dallas Fort Worth, they did 296 deals last year, multiple seven figures wholesaling in one part of the United States. You want a piece of that action? 14 people working on staff. And then what are we dealing with? Could you even acquire and deal with three, like 290 deals in your market? It's just not even a thing. Like in Winnipeg, we might move 15,000 houses a year. So I'm supposed to say that I'm going to do like 500 of them. Like, I'm going to be that guy. Like, it's just not possible. And so if you have big dreams, go for it. If you're tired of your small town and you're in the middle of Saskatchewan and you're like, there's only 20 houses in this town, find an online wholesaling thing. The opportunity is everywhere. I know people who do deals in Dubai and who do deals in the UK, and it's a mindset thing that says you
Yeah.
can't. It's just fear. It's fear manifesting in action. Because I have this mentor. His guy's name is Paul Fink. Okay, and he said something. I was at his mastermind class a couple weeks ago. He said, "I can't is bad communication." Because I can't still leaves. Like, if you said, "Oh, do you want to go out on Friday?" I said, "I can't." You still have questions for me, like, why?
Yeah.
So the background is, I can't is usually either I don't want to. I could have just said that. I said, I don't want to go on Friday. Or I don't know how to go out on Friday. Like, where are we going? I don't know how I would get there. So those things are very different. And when you
Yeah.
look at what you're doing in real estate, you say, I do want to. That's why I'm doing it. So really all that's left with I can't wholesale in the United States is I don't know how. And
Yeah.
so that's fear manifesting itself again, fear of the unknown. What if I screw it up? What if I, figure it out? All the information's out there, bigger pockets, YouTube University, or pay 5 grand and get someone like RJ Bates III to teach you how it's done. I had him on my podcast. Is crazy. The guy's a genius. So there's people out there that can help you through it. Now, when I started, I got in for free. I worked for someone, right? So
Okay.
if you're broke, like a lot of people are listening to us go buy a course, buy a course, buy a course, get a mentor, right? That's a good idea. And there's two ways in this world that you can pay for something, either with your
Time and
time
money.
or with your money. And so find someone in the States who's like doing it, what you want to do, and call them up and say, hey, can I get a list of leads in your script and find you deals? And they'll say, yes, you can. And then you're just calling and then you find something, they do all the work. But at least you proved the first part. When
Yeah.
I started with Stefan, I didn't know nothing, but I proved it part by part by part till I didn't need the training wheels anymore and I could go full tilt and do whatever it is that I wanted to do.
Okay. Bro, dropping a lot of games. So, let's bring it back to Canada. Like, you mentioned something about like wholesale whales, like,
Yeah.
can you, so like, does this have to do with, because that sounds to me more like, so how you have like the mafia,
Yeah, it is.
um,
Exactly. You got it.
you
It's a
know,
mafia.
so tell me about that, and tell me about how you guys came together in a city to say, hey, we we want to control the flow of information in this city. Anything that goes, any seller that calls into
Yeah.
any wholesale list come through us. So, tell me about how that works, how that's set up, and what the advantages of that has been, what the disadvantages are. I just want to get your thoughts on if that could also work outside of Winnipeg.
Yeah. I think if you're so let's take it right back to the beginning. So we were doing a lot of wholesaling. I was doing a lot of wholesaling
Yeah,
on my own with my own marketing and once in a while I would like message a local guy and I'd have a tough deal to move and all of a sudden
yeah,
he's like, I
yeah.
got a guy for that. And we would split it, 50-50, 10K, I'd take five, he'd take five. And he didn't have to bring the buyer. And I was like, wait a second. Why? Because we'd also end up, I'd be doing the meeting with the seller and they'd be like, yeah, I just talked to Marlou like an hour ago, or I just talked to Sean and he was in here too. And like, how much time are we wasting all dating the same
Yeah.
people to find out the price is wrong? So I said, look, I'm gonna just take every like wholesaler that I think is worth their weight, because you kind of know who's doing things and who isn't really doing things. And I just made a Facebook group and I just added them and I said, this is the Whalers. Welcome to the Whalers. If you have a deal and you want to put it up here and you want me to exercise it on my list, these are the rules. It's a 50-50 split. If I bring the buyer and you bring the seller, we'll cut it right down the middle and everyone wins. Because we were also like losing deals to not having
Mhm.
our own lists.
So I have a question. So do you only put deals in that group that's under contract?
Yeah,
Or okay, so it's not like you get a call and then you share with the group because someone could take it from
we
you, right?
do. We do on like address. So it's like
Okay.
just like you wouldn't if you didn't have something under contract, you wouldn't say, "Hey, I have a deal at 123 Fake Street." You'd just say, "Hey, I got a call from someone on Fake Street. Did you?" And what are the odds, like, okay, yeah, I got a call from that lady on Fake Street. And now we can talk about it in the group and someone else says no, or the other guy says no. And we just actually had that like an hour ago. We had a call come in on Fleet here in Winnipeg and another guy's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I got the same call from the same thing. Apparently the foundation's busted. People have already been in it, so it collapses all of our time because we would have all been going out running like it was the freshest thing, but already guys have been in there and said, "Oh, foundation's screwed. If you get a
So I have a
call, get
question.
with it."
This is actually very interesting. So in an event where two people get the calls, right? So
Hmm.
again, the seller calls two people.
Yeah.
Would both of you work together to close that deal? Like who would get it under contract?
Um, Whoever's closer to getting it under contract. Like if it's
Okay.
a if like there's a certain amount of human nature that where, for instance, Filipino sellers and white people, we do okay together. But if I send, like, let's say Marlu, who's Filipino, gets that lead, he's going in there and he's going to speak to Gala and they're going to have, like, they're going to have some lumpia and all that. And they're going to click like that, the human nature of the same culture. And he's going to get a better deal. And if he gets a better deal, the fee's bigger. So I'll push it to someone who I know is going to benefit the seller's um, experience. So
Yep.
we
Yep.
work together to make sure that the deal goes to the group. Because either way, if he gets it or if I get it, I'd like to be the one on contract. But if I blow it, he can come around and do it again. At the end of the day, I just want the deal to come to the table and I can bring it to my buyer who I would have brought it to anyway. And I got to stay home and he went out on a Friday night at 8 o'clock and talked to the old lady. And then on Saturday, I bring my guys with, I got lots of sleep because I wasn't out at this house till 10:30 at night. So,
Yep.
I always say the effort, right? If I can take half of it for doing half the work, then I'll do that.
Okay. How about in an event where he also has the buyer, so he gets the deal, he gets the buyer. Like, how do you get paid in that
I
instance?
don't. I don't care. I say good for you, man. And we have competitions. We do a monthly whalers trophy for the person who did the most money. Like, we're here, it's an accountability group too. Like, go get it, man. Oh, you got a 50K wholesale? Awesome. Good job, man. I'm proud of you. And that's really the group too, because sometimes as a wholesaler, you probably feel a little bit like a lone wolf in your own office, alone,
Yeah.
no team. So like it's a great way to create a community. We have barbecues and we get together and we talk about the market and we talk about what we're seeing. So it really like helps to reduce that lone wolf thing too. So if you're in a market where it's not so much a meetup where it's like open to everyone. It's a
Yep.
closed group. We work together. Only serious guys are in there. If you're not doing deals, we cut people out. If you haven't brought
Whoa.
anything to the table, we cut people out. All of a sudden, they're out of the Facebook group, and I'll call 5 or 6 people who aren't active, and then people will be like, "Whoa, you're cutting the list." I'm like, "Yeah, they weren't doing anything," and let that be a notice that if you're not doing anything, I'll cut you too. So do something. Like, don't just waste space in this room. Like, do something or get cut.
Okay, so when someone brings a deal to the table, then anyone can bring their buyers, and
Yeah,
whoever brings their
we'll have a
buyers.
showing. Yeah, we'll have a showing and everyone will know when it is, and we'll all like call everybody we know and blast it out to all our lists. And we had a wholesale meeting where I think there was like 30 or 40 people showed up to look at the house. And you can imagine, you have 30, 40 people, that thing's going, it's sold.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
when you can
yeah.
get that auction environment by having all these multiple buyers, a lot of looky loos and whatever, but
Oh,
that
nice.
really puts
Okay.
the pressure on the buyers to give you the check now. None of this, oh, I'm going to go home and run my numbers. No, the other 39 people are going to think. And if 39 isn't into it, 38 is. And we'll get so many people showing up that we'll only let people in who have their checkbook. We expect people to write the
Okay.
money right there.
Hmm. So if I'm playing this back, what you're essentially saying is there's a world where two or three or four of you could be sending the same deal through all your lists at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can see how that's valuable on the disposition side. On the acquisition side, like, do you guys ever do some type of price fixing? Well, I wouldn't call it price fixing, but for example, if the seller calls one person and the seller calls the second person, if you guys are competing, then there's the incentive to undercut the other person. But if you guys are collaborating, you know, you might want to, like, maybe one
It
person
really
offer
helps.
this
Yeah,
price.
we do talk about it and say it's not worth more than that. And if you want to take it under contract, that's your own business. And I'm just not going to send it on my list because I'm not going to bring my buyers to that pricing. So that
Yeah.
it's like it kind of self manages itself. Um, a lot of the guys we do training at our whalers events, so they train under me, and we we train each other. So we don't have a lot of problems with the pricing because people know what a bad price is, and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you can get reputation for bringing junk to the table, and then your career's
Yeah.
over. So don't do that.
Okay. Okay. Like as you were speaking, all I was thinking about is, could this work in Ontario?
Oh, for sure.
So there's a question that I didn't ask. Do you guys have territories where it's like, okay, this is my territory, this is my territory?
Well,
You know,
Winnipeg would be like this the same size as like some of your towns, like Hamilton. So maybe you could have territories, but it doesn't. It's not to anyone's advantage to say like stay out of my side of town, like because if you pull something on your marketing, I don't have to spend marketing, and I can still exercise a 50% fee for bringing my guy. So like
mhm.
it's in my best advantage to be connected and all of us connected
Yeah,
than
yeah.
trying to be like stay out of my side of town, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
And to do
And
it, set it up.
yeah, who knows if that would work in Ontario? Like for any wholesalers that are listening, if you think having what did you call the group again? The
We're the
whalers.
whalers. Like, you know, a whale, like it takes
Yeah,
a
yeah.
bunch of guys to take it down, right? So that's where
Oh,
the
I
whaling
love it.
came from because you go out in a boat into the ocean and you try to get a big fish. So
Nice.
we give out a little whale trophy to the people who make the most money, you know, people who bring the most deals in. So,
Okay,
um,
guys, anyone who's listening to this episode, if you think the whaler concept is going to work in Ontario, let's set it up.
you
It's
better
actually
do it
going to be
or I'll
fun.
just do it and then you'll join mine.
No, but it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun. I think like there's a world where collaboration is key. Like especially where you like all of you have your
In an
buyers
up
list.
market, like when the market is
Yeah.
up too, and there's so many deals. Like we used to have Super Thursdays where we'd set all of we'd collaborate, so all of our showings would be on Thursdays at 6, and we'd go like one house to the next house to the next house. We'd drag all the buyers in the cars, and we'd do like 4 or 5 showings in a row, and we'd sell everything because they were like, oh, they'd get to the house, and if someone showed up late, we're sorry, man, sold. But we're doing one just up and around the corner, and we drive. Everyone would go there and go there. So like
Whoa.
in an up market, when it's on an upswing, it's awesome. In a down market, people are a little bit more closed. They're like keeping their deals for themselves, but it
Yeah, yeah.
still does help make sure that we don't overpay for things, that sellers aren't playing us against each other, that we know and we can like not go and see that lead because someone else has already been through it and said, oh, here's the pictures, here's the basement wall collapsing. If they call you, tell them, yeah, my friend said it's falling apart. I'll pay you 50 cents on the dollar. And it cuts the nonsense out of the market really quick when the top 10 guys are touching everything, right?
Bro, man, thank you, thank you, thank you for all the bombs that you've dropped today. Um, if you had one thing to say to any newbies that are looking to get into wholesaling, specifically like the concept of acquisitions, negotiating off-market deals, what would you say?
um I think really the fear thing, it doesn't go away, but you can use that. I would always say to people that that anxiety that you feel about something new or you're not sure where you're going, that's usually the direction that you should be going with your life. It's not it's not like it's not holding you back. You're not going to die. Things aren't going to end. It's not like lions and tigers and bears. That's where that human nature fear comes from. Like we might die if we go out of our cave, we might get killed. That doesn't exist in the year 2024. We're not going to get killed if we go and screw up a wholesale and owe someone 5 grand. Yeah, make it up in the second half, but if you feel anxiety about an idea, like maybe you're nervous about going into multifamily, if you have the guts to go after it and you feel nervous about it, that's like a guiding stone that says you should do that. If you're not nervous, that means you don't care. That means you don't care if you win or lose. So it's probably not for you in the first place. So just go for it if you feel that anxiety, that fear, you're on the right path. And fear can be conquered by information, because there's nothing, like if me and you can do it, man, anyone can do this. And that's one thing. When I was really early on, after I got my first deal streak, I was standing in my brother's living room and I was like, anyone could do this. They just they just need the information and
Time.
the right execution, and you can do this. It's not that hard, but it will take some work.
Okay. Now we are getting close to the end of the show, and as you know, and you might know, at the end of every show, we ask the same question. You've been sharing a lot of bombs, a lot of high level stuff, positive stuff, but we like to end the show with asking what your greatest L in real estate has been. An L in this case would be it could be a loss, it could be a learning, it could be a turning point, just any experience that you would say was very pivotal to your experience where you learned a lot. What would that be?
Every time I wholesale and I remove conditions without a buyer, it's cost me money. All of my losses have come from thinking I know better than the buyers and thinking I'm going to go unconditional and sell it in my possession period. The biggest L's you're going to take as a wholesaler are by removing conditions without a buyer and thinking you know better. Don't do it. Just walk away. Just walk away, man. It's cost me $200,000 in my career taking L's on unconditional contracts. And I could have
Oh,
avoided all of them. Like, it could have avoided all of them by just when the agent's pressuring you to go unconditional, you say, no, thank you. And when they're like, you got to write clean, and you're like, fine, then I won't, and just walk away, man. Just walk away. I had a guy, he's like stuck in a deal that he went unconditional on. He's like, I'm thinking about raising the money and doing the deal. I'm like, it's a bad deal, man. Just take the L, take the 5K loss, make them write a paper that says they're not going to come after you, and walk away. Because the other thing that happens is, let's say you do that deal and you get tied into it. How much energy are you going to spend on that versus just finding another deal?
yeah.
Don't go unconditional. If you're listening, write this on your wall in the
Don't go
biggest.
firm. Don't go
Don't
firm.
do it
Don't go.
unless you've got the money from the buyer in your hand. If they've written you a check, then remove the conditions. If you don't have a firm buyer, that's where I've lost all the money in real estate, is just going unconditional, thinking I knew better than the market, and finding out real quick that also I did one of the deals. Like, the biggest loss is I took the deal in and raised the money and wasted like 2 years of my life. Like, just don't do it. If you're a wholesaler or you're a flipper, like, if nobody else wants that deal, it's probably not a deal. And if the agent's pressuring you to go unconditional or the seller doesn't want conditions, find another deal. It's not a unique situation. You'll find another one.
Perfect, Bryce. Thank you for that mic drop moment. Okay, so we are at the end of this episode. I want to say a big thank you to Bryce for coming on. And more importantly, I want to say thank you to everyone for listening to the Juice Estate Hosted podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Now, before we head out, Bryce, where can people find and connect with you?
The easiest place is at Bryce Kaminsky, all one word, BryceKaminsky at Instagram, at Bryce Kaminsky. That's where you can find my links, my reels. I drop training reels out of my weekly things, so just little clips of the stuff that I think people should hear. If they're not in the class, at least you can watch a 30-second hot tip about something that I'm thinking about that week. So also, if you want to get in the class, just DM me. The link's always up. I'm always posting it. It's a free class every Wednesday, 8:30 Central. We go until people are done asking questions, sometimes 10, 11 o'clock. So come and hang out. It's all about buying deals. If you're having trouble buying deals, come hang out after you're done with your podcast, with your segment, because I'm going to go to yours, and then I'm going to go.
Also Wednesday.
I'm going to steal all your ideas. I'm going to put them on my podcast. No, but there's lots of training out there. You're doing yours. I'm doing mine at 8:30. You could come to both.
Yep.
Take advantage of the thing. The trouble, and here's the one message I want to leave with people with at the end. Just because it's free doesn't mean it doesn't have any value, guys. People
Oh,
only
bro,
seem to
tell me about
value
it.
what
Tell me
they
about it.
pay for. And because it's free, they're like, oh, it must not have any value. How about we've paid tens of thousands of dollars for our education? Some people have paid hundreds of thousands. Maybe we're just giving back a little bit. And yeah, there's fees to, work with us in bigger ways. But the reality is that sometimes free information is valuable out there. So don't weigh the information based on what you paid. Just listen to it and see if it's what you're looking for,
Boom. Okay, thank you very much, Bryce. Wanted to say thank you to everyone once again. As I mentioned earlier, be sure to rate and review us on Apple, Spotify, Google, and be sure to hit that subscribe and notification button so that you know when this episode drops and when the next episode drops. So until then, remember, a daily day keeps scarcity at bay.
Awesome.